Hi guys, today I am finishing up, knock on wood, a project that's been ongoing for a long time, a little 7 jewel Elgin pocket watch. This was the watch that I made a regulator pin for and did static poising in order to remove weight from the balance wheel. So I suspected that um, either someone had replaced the wheel with a wheel that wasn't appropriate for the hairspring, or they had messed around with the screws. So what I had to do was remove weight from the balance wheel in order to time the watch. After I did the video, I ended up doing that 2 more times just to get it so that I didn't have to have the regulator jammed all the way over to fast in order to get the watch to keep proper time. That's just not a very professional look, even though it is my watch. So what I'm going to be doing today is casing the watch, doing another little test on the timing machine, and then I'm going to put it in my pocket and wear it and see if it keeps time and keeps running. So here I've got the watch case. I've polished this up by hand. I've got just a cheap little pocket watch chain. I've got my movement. I've got my dial. And I've got hands. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is put the dial on, then I'll get it into the case, then I'll put the hands on, and hopefully, maybe that'll be it for this watch. We'll see. Okay, so I've now got the movement on a casing cushion, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to apply just a little bit of grease to the cannon pinion because I've got to put the hour wheel on top of the cannon pinion, and it just rides against the cannon pinion, so I'm going to put a little bit of grease on there, not much at all. Then I'm going to put the hour wheel on, and that's going to hold the hour handle. Loop on just a little bit. It's always a good idea to check whether you have the right amount of oil on your oiler instead of just diving in. Looks fine. Okay. So now I'm going to put on the hour wheel. The hour wheel just sits freely, is held down by gravity against the cannon pinion. And in a lot of watches, you put on a little, what's called a dial washer or a foil that holds the hour wheel down in engagement with the other wheels, right? So that way your hands don't get out of alignment. In this case, the dial sits flush up against the hour wheel, and so I don't think it's necessary to add a dial washer, and indeed the watch didn't come with one. Yep, there we go. So that's the dial fitted flush up against the hour wheel, is my hope. So what I'm going to do now is just use a small screwdriver, tighten down those dial foot screws, and that'll hold the dial in place. So I've got clean finger cots here. I've cleaned the dial. I can use really light finger pressure against the dial as long as my finger cots are clean, and I'm just going to go around the perimeter of the movement and tighten down these dial foot screws. What I'm going to do is just slide the movement into the case now. Okay. There we go. There's our movement in the case. So I'm just going to pop on the front, the bezel really quick, and actually that's going to keep the movement from falling forward. And I'm going to insert case screws, which are going to pull the movement back into the case. So now we've got the movement in the case, and what we can do is insert our large case screws, and these screw into the movement, but have a lip that extends over the case. So when you tighten them down into the movement, what they do is pull the movement back securely into the case, so it's not flopping around. It doesn't want to fall out the front. So there we go. Get a nicely fitting screwdriver, not always guaranteed, and then we'll tighten these screws down. Okay, put the case back on, and then we can fit the hands to the watch. So I'm going to start with the small sub-seconds hand. All the hands were in pretty bad shape. The minute hand was pretty bent, so I straightened it. And I've hand polished all the hands just using a little metal polish. So first thing I'm going to do here is just set this hand down on its post. There we go. Now it appears to want to just go right on there, but I'm going to get a little plastic and push down just a tiny bit. Okay, that should be okay. What I'm going to do now is just make sure that the hand is not making contact with the dial. I don't think it is. It certainly has at times in the past, but I sort of corrected the hand. No, that looks good. So later I'm going to come back and just watch it all the way around the little sub-seconds dial. Make sure at no point that it's coming in contact with the dial, because it clearly has in the past. There's some scuff marks, the sub-seconds, the sub-dial there. So something to watch out for. Okay, next, the hour hand. So this fits directly on the hour wheel, which I put on before, which is driven by the cannon pinion via the minute wheel. So again, hand on. You can just use your tweezers to position it, and then before you push it home, use a little bit of plastic. Push down nice and straight. Okay, that looks good. Let me check the parallelism. No, not quite there. So you want your hands to always be parallel to the dial. Otherwise, if one hand is kind of angling up, another one's angling down, hands can catch each other and they can stop the watch. So you want to avoid that. Plus, it just doesn't look very professional if they are all askew. Although, frankly, it can be difficult on old watches like this. But that's nicely parallel. So now we've got hour hand and sub-seconds hand. So now we want to fit the minute hand. But what we want to do first is we want to line up the hour hand so that when we put the minute hand on, the hands are exactly aligned. So what I usually do is I set the hour hand to be about, well, close to midnight, but not quite there. Then I let the hand reach midnight by itself, and then I put on the minute hand, and that makes sure that the hands are going to be correctly aligned. I find that if I set the hand, if I set the hour hand to midnight and then immediately place the minute hand, the hands are not always perfectly aligned, perhaps because there's a little bit of slop in the motion work in the dial side train. So what I like to do is let the hour hand get to 12 of its own accord, and then that makes sure that when I put the minute hand on, the hands are going to be lined up correctly. So I'm going to pause the video for a moment. Just wait a minute. Then I'll set the minute hand on. Okay, so I've got my hands lined up here, and I'm just going to push the minute hand home here. One thing you can do is put the minute hand very lightly on its post, see how it tracks with the hour hand, and then when you're confident that you've got it placed perfectly, then you can come in and push it home. So again, just using a little bit of plastic here. Good, so now let's check the parallelism of that hand. Okay. Okay, now I'm just going to give the case screws a little bit, tighten them up a little bit, so I can feel when I wind the watch, the movement is slopping around just a little bit. So there we go. This watch has been on my bench for a long time because in order to repair it, I had to get a lathe, clean up the lathe, learn how to use the lathe, and only then could I proceed with the servicing of the watch. So Everything I've done here, new mainspring, new balance staff, new impulse jewel, new regulator pin, new guard pin, um, and 5 bushings made out of brass. So 2 for the escape wheel, 2 for the fourth wheel, and 1 for the center wheel. So with all that, I hope the restoration of this little Elgin 7-jewel pocket watch, a cheap little pocket watch from Elgin, Illinois, is completed. Okay, so here's our little Elgin on the timing machine. So the rate dial up is about plus 15 seconds a day. Pretty low beat error, definitely in the acceptable range. Again, I haven't set the lift angle here. I've just been going by eye. You can manually set the lift angle to determine the correct amplitude. What I'm going to do at the end is I'll just post a little video of the movement where you'll be able to see the amplitude. I believe it's about 270. But when the watch runs down, what I'll do later is manually calculate the lift angle, and then I'll get a better feeling on the amplitude. Okay, so here's the watch pendant up, one of the vertical positions. It's running about plus 20, plus 25, but it's a bit up and down. As you can well imagine, there's a bit more friction when the watch is running in a vertical position. And so consequently, any faults in the train, in the gear train, particularly with my bushings, for example, tend to get magnified. So one thing that I think might be worthwhile here is just letting the watch run in for a couple weeks and using it and see if some of these issues get kind of ironed out. For now, I think in practice, this watch is going to keep pretty nice time. And so I think it's time to wear it for a while, and maybe tweak the regulator a little bit. If it looks like it's really gaining, 25 seconds a day, dial it back a little bit. So this is what I do. I set the watch approximately at the correct rate and then wear it for a while, because the watch always wears a little bit different in practice than it shows on the time machine. So that's what's up next, and I'll just show you some parting shots of the watch now. So here's little Elgin outside, ready to go to work. I'm really pleased with how this restoration turned out. It's been a long time coming. Sorry for my gross deck. Winter's ending and it's time to do a little spring cleaning. And maybe Bonnie there will be of help. What do you think, Bonnie? She won't be any help. Thanks for watching.